Okay, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year to everyone. So welcome to VEExpo conference for year 2021. So my name is Eva and I will be the moderator for today's English conference talk session. Okay, so before we start, I hope that all of you here today can help to share this link to more groups, share to more people, share to your WhatsApp groups, so that more people will actually join us. So we hope that the numbers of this live session will keep going up. Okay, so because today we have already invited a speaker from UK. Okay, Dr. Zayi would like to share some of his thoughts with us. So please share out this Facebook Live to more people. Okay. All right. Okay. So hosted by Private Education Entrepreneurs Association of Malaysia (PM), VEExpo 2021 is the first ever and the largest virtual Malaysian education platform. So through this expo, parents will be able to explore the education options near to their house, near to their home. Okay, so beside that, VEExpo also arrange a variety of conference talks and forums to help parents gain more knowledge related to child's development and other education related topics. Okay, so for those that have not visited VEExpo yet, so please click into the link that we're going to share later in our comment, okay? Or you can actually go to www.veexpo.my, okay? So you may register and visit different education booths, okay? So on top of that, VEExpo has already prepared lucky draw prizes worth more than 10,000 ringgit Malaysia. So you will just need to register yourself into VEExpo and earn points by visiting more booths, interact with more booths, and if you are lucky enough, you may win some attractive prizes like brand new mobile phones and kitchen appliances. Okay, so great. Let me introduce you to today's speaker. So we're very lucky to be able to invite Dr. Zayi Liu all the way from UK to talk about why development matters. So I think for UK time right now, I think it's still quite early, maybe like 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so we're very thankful to be able to have Dr. Zayi here today to share with us amidst his very busy schedule. Okay, so Dr. Zayi is a consultant respiratory pediatrician in UK. So at the same time, he is also the CEO for AZ Preschool in Malaysia. Okay, so AZ Preschool has around 10 centers in Malaysia now. So without further ado, let us invite Dr. Zayi to start his conference topic, Why Development Matters. Okay, so Dr. Zayi, can you please share your screen? Okay, so let us invite Dr. Zayi with some claps and some likes and some heart, okay? So please put more hearts, yeah? Okay, in your comment section. Thank you. Okay, on to you now, Dr. Zayi.
Thank you. Thanks, Eva. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, Eva,
Yes,
can you
yes.
hear me okay? Yeah, sure. Okay. So thanks, Eva. Thanks for the lovely introduction. It's an honor to be here today at this first ever, largest virtual education expo. And it's very honored to be here to share why development matters in children with all the daddy mummies of Malaysia. I have no competing financial interests for this talk. And although I'm the CEO of AZ Preschool, but the content of this talk is entirely based on the professional knowledge and expertise. So in terms of what I'm going to share with daddy mummies of Malaysia in the next 30 minutes is why developmental matters in young children. I'll be talking about what are the main areas of child development, and then move on to talk about why is it important for parents to be aware of the principles of development. I'll then talk about why it matters and what are the negative influences that may affect young children's development and their outcome in the future. So when we talk about child development, we mainly talk about the 5 main areas of child development, which is intellectual or cognitive, emotional, language and communication, physical, which can be divided into gross motor and fine motor, social. For cognitive point of view, this is primarily concerned with children's problem-solving skill. For example, mathematic solving problems skills, thinking skills. For social and emotional, what we mean here is that this is the test of children's interaction with other people, including how they themselves act, and also beginning to recognize that their action may influence others. For language, speech, and communication, this is a child's ability to both recognize and interpret the language. As I mentioned earlier, physical, you can divide into fine motor and gross motor. Fine motor skill is the child's ability to interact with objects and use them appropriately, such as using a pencil to draw a circle shape, or using a pencil to write, or using the cutlery while during eating. As for gross motor skill, this is the child's ability to perform basic physical tasks. For example, riding a tricycle or riding a bicycle, jump, hop, running, etc. So moving on to what and why it's important for parents to understand the principles of child development, I'm going to share with Daddy and Mummies of Malaysia about 12 key principles of child development. And these general principles are taken from Early Childhood Literature Review. These principles should be considered when making decisions about your child or your children. By knowing what to expect, this will help parents know how best to provide a safe environment for children at specific ages. In addition, by knowing about the principles of child development will help parents to provide appropriate opportunities for children to grow and develop. For example, a parent will be able to choose the right toy or right activity that is appropriate for his or her child and ability. The understanding of this principle will also help parents to know what is realistic to expect of children at certain ages. So moving on to principle 1, interrelatedness. So what do I mean by interrelatedness? Different areas of development are interconnected and interrelated. What this means is that development in one domain can influence or is influenced by the development in other domain. For example, a child's language skill will affect or impact on his or her social relationship and social skill. And if you look at another example from this picture here, this is a picture showing various types of schools, as the preschools that built by children of ASEC. Okay, so when doing this project with the children, so you can see that there are several aspects or several domains of the child development is being involved here. Okay, the child or the children will need to have to use their cognitive thinking skills in terms of imagination, creativity, to think about what school he or she may want to design or build. Okay, and then moving on to social communication skill, whereby they will need to talk to the educators, the parents, and their peers in terms of what materials they need to build this school. Okay, discussing with their peers, okay, in terms of what is their school about. And of course, while making these beautiful preschools in various models, they will be using their fine motor skills. Okay, so this is what I mean by interrelatedness or interconnection between various aspects of development. So moving on to principle 2, orderly sequence. What do I mean by orderly sequence? So development occurs in a sequence of stages, can be predicted, with later abilities, skills, and knowledge building on those already acquired. For example, a baby will start to roll from front to back, back to front, okay, sit with support, sit without support, and then move on to crawl, pull to stand, making baby steps, unsteady steps, and then following walking independently. So these are predicted orderly sequence we expect for a child. So this is what I mean by one of the key principle, orderly sequence. We know that most of these development milestones occurred in a sequential order and transpire within a specific time frames. And this allow parents or educators provide suitable assistance to the children and whenever that it is necessary. So the next principle, key principle, is the varying rates. So what do I mean by varying rates here? So child development proceeds at varying rates from child to child, as well as unevenly within different areas of each child's functioning. And we must remember that this means that every child is unique in him or herself, okay? So they have their own patterns and timing on growth. We should not be comparing, child to child, and we must allow them to have sufficient time to grow and develop in their own way. And as I said before, every child is unique. They have their own unique personality, temperament, and learning style. I mean, the big question is, why is this important and what is the implication? I think we see this a lot in Asian countries or society, the kiasu phenomenon, whereby in general, a lot of Asians parents, they have this mentality that 不要让孩子输在起跑线上. But the key question is, 什么才是孩子人生真正的起跑线? Okay, of course, we do see that in Western society. I'm not saying that this is purely a phenomenon in Asian countries, but it comes to the question, is forcing our children to write, is forcing our children to learn spelling, understanding or recognize certain characters by the age of 4 correct? Does it even sound logical if you understand, what I have said so far in terms of the 3 key principles I have shared? Why is it that we want to compare my child to my friends or my neighbors or my relative's friend child, that he or she can do this, but not my child? So this is something that we should be reflecting for all parents or all educators. So moving on to the next principle, the long-term effects. Okay, so what do I mean here? So early experiences have both cumulative and delayed effects on individuals' children's development. We know that there is optimal period exists for certain types of development and learning. For example, the first 3 years of life is optimal for verbal language development. And we know that this is built on previous learning experience as well. Children learn certain tasks best and most easily at a particular point in their developmental milestone. And this task, we call it developmental task. And they do not move on to the next level until they have mastered the task for the present level. Okay, next principle, increasing complexity. So what do I mean here by increasing complexity? In child development, this proceeds in a predictable direction from simple to greater complexity, better organization, and internalization. What this means that a young child will usually, for example, self-talk before having abstract thinking, or they may use real items at the beginning in play before being able to substitute a pretend or other object for that item. We know that one of the key principles of child development is the influence of social and cultural context. And development and learning occurs in and are influenced by multiple social and cultural contexts, especially in Malaysia, which is a multicultural, multi-ethnicity society. We know that learning is addictive, and we need to help children to connect what they already know and what we want them to know. Okay. And for example, children whose primary language is not English will need to be given opportunity to learn and develop the language well, but at the same time continue to learn new concepts in their mother tongue or their native language. In addition to the social and cultural influence, we also know that biological and environmental factors affect child development. It is a result from interaction between biological maturations and the environment that can influence the progress of child development. For example, the language that children are exposed to is the one that they will learn, even though they are born with the capacity to learn any language in this world. So we must remember that children are active learners. They learn through play with various toys and games. If you hear your child, or if you see that your child is not interested, whether you are a mom or a dad or an educator, okay, the question you should ask yourself is that if a young child is not interested, this means that your technique and method at that point on the spot is probably wrong. And in terms of play as a key principle, we know that play is an important vehicle for children's development as well as a reflection of their development. By organizing the right prepared play environment with various themes and props, this can help various aspects of child development. For example, providing the motor toys will give parents or educators the opportunity to observe children's motor development in terms of fine motor or gross motor, for example. And there are many benefits of play and why play is a key principle. Okay, here is a partial list of skills which I've listed down in terms of all aspects of child development, including language skills, social communication, fine and gross motor skills. Okay, and also self-control skills plus cognitive skills. If you look at this picture on the right, this is some of the natural ingredients that you can find within our community that we prepare for the children at AZ Preschool for them to touch, to play. Okay, play is actually a very big subject in terms of topic. And I would like to direct daddy and mummies who are interested to knowing this key principle more to one of my colleagues, Mr. Jackie, who is a holder of bachelor degrees of ECE. Okay, he is talking about the importance of play in early childhood education in one of our parent studio, which you can catch up his talk and presentations and interact with him for the next 2 days if you look at the timetable. Mr. Jackie is also currently pursuing his master in early childhood education at University of Malaya. So moving to the last 3 principles that I would like to share with the parents is the practice and challenge as one of the key principles. We know that development advances when children have the opportunity to practice newly acquired skills as well as when they experience a challenge just before the level of their present mastery. For example, by allowing a child to put on their own coat when needed assistance will help them to practice and challenge themselves for further level. If you look at this picture, this is one of the example of one of our child washing her own dishes after lunch. Okay, these are practical life skills that a child should be learning at young age. So it is one of the key reasons why AZ Preschool incorporate Montessori approach, Montessori pedagogy and methods in our curriculum. So learning modes is the next key principle I would like to share. We know that children demonstrate different modes of knowing and learning and different ways of representing what they know. For example, after a walk around the neighborhood, one child may come back and excitedly explain to the parents what I saw, what is the scenery. But the other child might sit quietly and want to draw a picture. The other may act out and talk about what they have seen. Okay, and also we know that development continues throughout the life. So the last key principle I would like to share with Daddy Mummies of Malaysia is that we need to ensure the needs of the child are met. What I mean here is that children develop and learn best in the context of a community where they feel safe, when they feel valued, their physical needs are met, and they feel psychologically secured and ready. Okay. For example, if children are well fed, they will be able to concentrate on learning activities. On the other hand, if a child is living in a violent home environment, or if constantly being put down by his or her mother in terms of you're stupid, you're that and that, okay, even worse, physical punishment, then how do we expect the child can positively interacting with their peers? So moving on to why development matters. If you look at the evidence and facts, we know that early years of childhood form the basis of intelligence, personality, social behavior, and capacity to learn and nurture oneself as an adult. The experience they have in early childhood will shape their brain and their capacity to learn, to get along with others, and also to respond with daily stresses and challenges. If you look at the figure on the right, okay, this is a figure that has been presented by various researchers over the years, okay, showing that in young children, there is certain amount of sensitive periods in early brain development. And as you can see from this figure, the x-axis is the years, okay, if you look at this, okay, before 5 years old, clearly there is a sensitive period of development, regardless of which dimension you're looking at, okay? This is when the wiring of the brain for specific abilities is established. Has anyone wondered, in terms of why human beings still exist and did not go extinct? Now, if I have time, I would like to ask Eva this question. Why is human beings still exist, whereas why some animals has already gone missing throughout the evolution? Why?
Oh, you would like to ask me, yeah? Okay.
Yes.
I'm really not so good in science kind of thing. Okay, science part. Okay, so maybe because I don't know, because we are actually much more intelligent. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So
okay.
so
maybe you should actually reveal.
Yeah. So
you should reveal the answer.
Yeah, so obviously it's a very philosophical, debate or discussion. But if you look at animals kingdom, okay, with mammals, okay, if you look at, for example, goat, sheep, dog, cat, etc., when they're first born, okay, some of them within few hours, days, they can start to walk. They can run independently. But for humans, we can't. We lie there in a basket for 9 months or 10 months before we start moving, walking. Some children take 18 months before they can walk independently. Okay, the key reason is because we spend the first few years of our life in our brain development. Okay, that's why human beings have much bigger brain size and capacity compared to animals, which is one of the key reasons why we are the master of this world. Okay, which is why we are still existing in this world. And we also know that when the quality of stimulation, support, or nurturance is deficient, child development is seriously affected. Various studies have already shown that if you give the right stimulation, it will lead to good outcome and good brain development. And a child's interest and curiosity are the motivators that create new connections to acquire new skills. And each skill builds on a skill already learned. Okay, so a well-prepared environment can support and enhance a child's interest and curiosity. And we know that early brain development will establish a child's social competence, cognitive skills, emotional well-being, language, literacy skills, physical abilities, and also importantly is a marker for well-being in school and life resiliency in future. Okay, for example, I'm not the brightest in my class, okay, throughout my life. However, what I have is very resilient perseverance, and this was instilled when I was obviously young, being a young child, when I went to Isaac preschool in 1988. The environment helps me to build what I am today. So moving on to negative influences, why parents need to understand this will affect your child's development. Okay, so if you look at this picture on the left, okay, this young toddler is clearly, following his father, low mowing the garden. Okay, similarly, if you look at the picture in the middle, this young child, is giving you a cigarette. How is this child at this young age knowing what to do with a cigarette? Yeah, and you look at the picture on the right. Okay, clearly this father in this picture is pretending that he is not around the children by putting, a door to separate them with the children so that the children can focus on screen time while the father is reading a newspaper. Okay, we know that there is significant evidence that links to the circumstances for young children and habits that form in early years can lead to non-communicable diseases of adulthood. We know that the influences of parents, peers, and schools on development during early childhood cannot be overlooked. Okay, young children whose parents show resentment or hostility have an increased risk of poor health in later childhood, and also negative parenting qualities have been used as a predictor of ill health and higher use of health services in the future. I would like to quote Professor Francis, the CEO of Education Endowment Foundation UK, who was also the previous director of UCL, Institute of Education. Once children fall behind due to various negative influences, it's hard for them to catch up, and they are likely to fall further behind throughout school and also in adult life. And we know that some of them may never catch up with their peers. There is strong and consistent evidence shows that the effect of early disadvantage on children can be reduced. Early intervention for disadvantaged children leads to massive improvements in terms of their survival, health, growth, cognitive, and social development. Children who were given or received assistance in their early years achieve more success at school, and as adults, they have higher employment and earnings, better health, and lower levels of welfare dependence. We must view our efforts, especially we as educators, make great efforts to improve every child's development. We must view this as investment, not a cost. So one of the last negative influences I would like to share with daddy mummies of Malaysia is that nowadays, if you go to a restaurant, you will see that your next door table, in order to keep their child quiet so that you can have some peaceful minds and peaceful time, automatically a lot of parents will bring their tablet, mobile phone to pass it to the children, okay? And so that they can watch the screen and be quiet throughout the meal time. But we know that screen time is one of the negative influences that can affect child development, okay? I know that the situation now is different because we are in pandemic, but when the pandemic finishes, the vaccine is coming soon. In fact, a lot of people have already had a vaccine. We must send our children back to school. We must, okay? We know that preschool children who had a lot of screen time showed structural difference in their brain with less brain white gray matters integrity, and lower IQ point when they're grown out, compared to those children who use less screen time. In fact, American Academy of Pediatrics had recommended that no screen time for children under 2 years of age. We also know that more than 2 hours a day of screen time may affect children's mentality, mental health, emotional, and physical well-being. For example, children who use a lot of screen have difficult in social interaction, sleep problems, and concentration problems. As a respiratory pediatrician at my sleep clinic, constantly I see parents who come to see me because, they say that, oh, my child has, doesn't sleep well, okay, is very tired next day. You may wonder why, but this is, an increasing phenomenon. Okay, we see that in Western society as well. Now, one of the routine questions I ask my parents is that, what do your child do before your sleep time? 9 out of 10 would say that, my child or the teenager would be saying, I will be watching my DVD, movie, my phone, my laptop. Okay, we must understand that this is poor sleep hygiene. What it means is that, your brain is constantly stimulated with light emission from the screen. That means that during the sleep, okay, your brain is constantly being stimulated, which means that your brain has no time to relax and have a proper rest. So in summary, I hope I have introduced and covered the main areas of child development, and also have introduced the concept of principles of child development and why it is important for parents and educators. I hope I also explained to parents of Malaysia and some educators that why child development matters, and I have given some examples in terms of negative influence which can affect child development. So you can look for more information in terms of ASEC preschool at the following, okay, various links on the social media. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank my team, okay, my team members who, a lot of them are early childhood practitioners with qualification. And lastly, thanks PM for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here today to share my information with the parents of Malaysia. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Dr. Liu. So before we go into, it's very, I would say, because I also, I try to listen as attentive as possible, because this topic is something, not so light, is slightly heavier compared to our previous forum and conference conference talk session this morning. So, okay, before we go into Q&A session, okay? So over here, I would like to let all of you know again, okay? So to remind all of you again to visit this VEExpo online education booth. We have more than 100 booths in VEExpo today, okay? So many of the exhibitors have offered different kind of promotions, as well as like some free gifts for student enrollments, okay? So you may check on the map directory to look for suitable education centers and services, okay, that are nearby to your location. So it is actually quite convenient to navigate. Okay, so remember, the more booths you visit, the more chances you can get to win lucky draw prizes. Okay, so let's start our Q&A session now. Okay, so for the Q&A session, let's see whether, okay, so over here we have one, before I ask more questions, because I also do have some questions to ask. So let's look at the questions from the comments first. Okay, so over here we have a question. So, hi, Dr. Liu, may I ask how many hours of screen time for kids below 7 years old? So means that for preschoolers, maybe, because just now you mentioned that 2 years and below, it is not recommended to have any screen time. Okay, so, but I think that is very acceptable, because, 2 years and below, I think their eyes development are still not ready yet. But what about preschoolers? Okay, because right now in home Malaysia, I think most of the places we're still having CMCO. So we cannot avoid doing online learning. So can you please answer these questions, like for maybe 3 to 6 years old? Do you have like specifically screen time, maximum screen time per day for the
Yeah,
children aged 6 and below?
this is a very good question, and there's no right and wrong answer. In an ideal situation, of course, we do not want to have screen time as much as possible for young children less than 5 or 6. Okay, if you look at the American Academy of Pediatrics, in terms of standard recommendation, we would normally recommend an hour to 2 per day maximum for children less than 7 years of age. Okay. However, okay, we need to balance the reality at the moment. Okay, if you do not promote or encourage your child continue to learn in this pandemic, okay, we know for sure that many parents, including myself, okay, during lockdown in UK, you know, me and my wife, we struggled because, you know, I have to work. I'm a frontline worker. You know, I cannot say to my patients in the ward that I you know, today I have to look after my child at home. I can't. Okay, my children at home. So being a frontline workers, you know, children's patients are my priority. Okay, so when young children, they're at home, okay, you and I know very well that we struggle to keep them company. We struggle to keep them focused. Okay, then you need to balance out. Okay, is an hour to 2 a day of quality live Zoom session interaction with the teachers is worse than watching cartoon or at worst YouTube in front of screen time. So in my opinion, of course, you know, choosing the timing with the teacher spend, even if it's via Zoom, is more important than, you know, letting a child, you know, sitting in front of TV watching cartoon. Yeah, I hope that answer your question.
Yes, yes. I think yes, I think this is a very important information or important messages to all the parents. Okay, so because just now one of the principles that Dr. Zai actually shared is actually on something to do with the environment. Okay, so one of it is to make sure that there's this prepared environment. Okay, so this is actually very similar to, I think we can actually use some of the points in this question, because before the pandemic, okay, so we'll try to actually reduce as much screen time as possible for children, let's say for preschoolers. Okay, but because right now our context is already different, because you know, although it's actually pandemic, CMCO, MCO, but we want children to continue learning. So we are finding alternative ways to make sure that their learning has still continue. So I'll say that taking a good balance is actually very important. Okay, so a
Yes,
very
I
good
agree.
example
Yeah.
from Dr. Zhe is that in fact, you know, like, you know, if it's not during pandemic time, there are a lot of parents already start giving children screen time using mobile phones, using watching TVs, YouTubes, and so on. So if you compare having them to interact in Zoom with their friends and teachers, it is actually much more beneficial than you know, having screen time
completely
alone.
agree.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
will say that to all the parents out there, there is a no right or wrong answer. Although WHO, the World Health Organization, actually suggested that less than 1 hour of screen time per day for young children, but I would say that we also have to consider the context. Okay, we have to consider the environment right now. And as well as why development matters, because it matters so much that to stop children from learning at this young age at all, it is actually not balanced also, right? Okay,
Yes.
so and then yeah, so from here, I think that it's a very good answer, and then it's actually a food for thought for parents, because a lot of people, when they start talking about screen time, they'll just think alone on screen time only, but they will not actually think, why do we want to do online learning? Okay, and why not we just prepare some videos for children to see? Why not they just go to YouTube? There's so many educational videos out there. Okay, so I think this is a very good question as well as a very
Yeah.
good answer from Dr. Zaid. Okay, so and then
One thing, sorry, Eva.
okay, question
Sorry,
from
Eva.
okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
just one thing to add. In fact, a lot of academia, in high-income countries, they are even talking about the lost generation. Okay, what do I mean here by lost generation? Okay, the lost generations are actually this generation of pandemic children who lost a lot of valuable opportunity to learn. Okay, during lockdown, during this pandemic, okay, it is exactly as what you said. These children, will almost certain having a lot of their development being affected. Okay, so we must, whether you are parents, educators, we must do more. Okay, to ensure our children have the opportunity to grow.
Yes. Okay. So and then because I'm actually also dealing a lot with parents and children in my work. Okay. So and often we're going to, often parents is going to say that, okay, because school stops, okay, the children can't go to school anymore at this point of time. So then from here, I can see that a lot of parents are still, Malaysian parents are still putting children's learning responsibilities on us, the educators, us, the school, the teachers. Okay, but from this, after this pandemic, I think that parents maybe want to actually rethink again, because even the school has stopped. The child right now is at home. Your child is at home, so not just the effort of teachers alone can actually make the child actually learn something. Okay, and there are so many more things for them to learn at home. Okay, so I also really would like to suggest that it's not just learning, online learning, that matters, but however, what else other than online learning that the parents can actually do to extend whatever they have learned online, or whatever the information or knowledge that they've already learned online. So I think that one is much more important, and because got a lot of hands-on that we can do. But however, parents definitely will need to spend a little bit more time and effort, okay, while doing all this. Okay, so and
Yeah,
another
definitely.
question I think is also quite relevant. Yes, another question that I think will be quite relevant to Malaysian parents is that, because there are a lot of misconception for preschoolers while doing writing, because just now, on varying rates, on one of the second principle about varying rates that Dr. Zaid has shared with us. So on these varying rates, meaning that every children have their own milestone, have their own timing, okay, have their own pattern to learn, okay. So then they are so unique that, but however, like let's say in Malaysia, for Malaysia parents, right? Let me give an example. Writing, okay. I think that, in AZ preschools, I think your teachers will also face a lot of questions like that. So what if my children cannot write? Or at certain age, already 4 years or 5 years, some parents, they are starting to worry that their children cannot write, while the other children can already write very well, okay? So what is your point of view on writing, on whether we need to give a lot more writing for children or not? Because one of the questions that I get asked the most is, do preschools provide homework? What if my child is not writing enough? Okay, it's all about writing, writing, and writing. But learning itself is not just about writing. So what is your thoughts on like bearing rates and and Malaysians parents' obsession on writing? Okay, get their child to read, right?
I think this obsession is not just in Malaysia. Okay, nearby countries, Singapore, China, Hong Kong, you see similar picture. I have to say that children in UK do write as well. Okay, so which is why there's a lot of debate at the moment in the UK in terms of revisit the national and government's policies and guidance in terms of development matters. In fact, if you Google UK development matters, okay, there is a lot of intense topic discussion at the moment, because UK is going through the next phase of revisit the national curriculum for young children preschool age. Okay, so I think we can look at this question in several dimensions if you dissect one by one. Okay, first of all, the question to the parent is that if your child is not ready, if you force, if you panic, if you put more pressure, the question is that, is it going to help the child? Your child is not going to suddenly turn around and be able to write. Okay, what you should do as a parent, as a teacher or an educator, is that, okay, if this child is weak in fine motor skills, you should spend more time. Okay, for example, for what my teachers will do is, if this child is weak in fine motor skills, okay, so this semester my teachers will be spending a lot of time, okay, using different fine motor skills activities to stimulate the child in terms of fine motor skill development. Okay, within a few months, you may be surprised that this child will be ready. Okay, the way the child holds the pen, the pencil will be more matured. Okay, so then we look at the question of homework. Now, this is a very tricky and difficult question. I think whichever parent you're looking at, whether you are going to send your child to primary Chinese school or national school or international school, okay, you need to find the right balance. Okay, by knowing 1,000 words to write before the age of 7 does not mean that your child is going to be a PhD holder or someone who is very talented in the future. Okay, we know that there is no research showing that that is the case. In fact, there are some research and evidence shows that if you push too hard at a early young age, okay, the mental health rate in issues is rising, is higher in children who are being pressured at a young age. Okay, we know that around the world, the suicidal rate for teenagers is rising. Okay, this is of course to do with the stress they are enduring, whether before or after or during the pandemic. Okay, this is what we are seeing. Okay, every week I'm seeing a child with suicidal or self-harm in my ward. Every week, at least one. Okay, so in the past 10 years ago, when I just became a specialist, okay, I don't see that. Maybe once in 3 weeks, once in 4 weeks. Okay, that begs the question, to us as grown out, as educators and parents. Okay, as what I said earlier. Okay,
Yes.
什么是孩子的起跑点? Okay, you have to be clear. Okay, we are not running a 100-meter sprint. We are in this for long-term marathon. This is something that we should be reflecting on in terms of thinking about this question.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So I'm actually very agree with what Dr. Zai actually said. Like, let's say for the first part on like writing, because just now Dr. Zai actually mentioned that, okay, if you're, because a lot of things are interrelatedness. Okay. So it actually comes back to the first principle, as well as the increased complexity for number 5, principle number 5. It's because like when we want the children to write, because a lot of parents, they think that if the child can write well, means that it equals to they're actually much more clever. Okay, so this is a misconception that a lot of Asian parents actually do not know. Okay, so but however, actually writing is just a way to express their knowledge. Okay, so there are actually various ways to express children's knowledge. So not just this writing is a good development. In fact, writing's development is the basic of writing's development is actually through physical skills, from physical skills. Okay, so if your child's physical skills has no problem, basically everyone can write. So what is the differences is that the brain development, for example, to see whether this child is actually much more brilliant or much more clever. Okay, it's actually the brain development instead, or if compared to like just physical. Okay, so yeah, so here I think that is actually a very good information for all the parents out there who are actually looking at our live now. Okay, as well as like for the second one, the homework. Yes, okay. It actually relates back to stress, okay? So yes, we are going to extend our we actually have a forum for about on how to help children to deal with stress, okay? On this coming Sunday, okay? But I think because a lot of this topic are actually interrelated. So if you want your child to develop well, okay, in different areas, we also have to really look into not giving them too much stress, okay? So, and this stress usually comes from adults, us adults, because we give them a lot of expectation. We want these children to actually meet our expectation. Okay, so this is actually not even the expectation of the children. Okay, so I think even from this morning up until now, all these forums and talks actually keep giving parents some food for thought that, your whatever decision that you make for your child or development that you want your child to grow, to build, to develop, okay, it's actually for your child and it's your child's level, because do not forget that do not put adults expectation on little children like that. Okay, so I also like it that for your first interrelatedness principle, where we can actually kill a lot of birds with one stone. Okay, so it means that when we are doing something, maybe we are doing arts, we are doing art and craft with children, it's not just art and craft. Okay, it's art and craft, it's expressiveness, it's how do they actually socialize and put their ideas into their work. Okay, so I because I really have to stress this, because a lot of parents, they think that if I send my child to, I don't know, like let's say tuition class, English class, okay, so I just expect them to only learn English. Or when I actually put my child into an art class, drawing class, so I just want to build one development, but actually development can be built concurrently.
Yes, absolutely.
And just using certain, maybe one kind of activity. Okay, so I think this also sparked us a lot, that hey, it's not just only we do one thing at a time. Okay, so maybe for all the parents out there, you might actually want to start to think what some activities that you actually let your child to do. Maybe, for example, just building blocks itself. So maybe you can think about it, just building block itself, how many different developments that your child can actually develop, okay, can actually build, for example, physical skills, fine motor skills, because they are building blocks, as well as I don't know, problem solving skills, okay, and different skills.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's a very, very good sharing from Dr. Zahi here today. Because of time constraint, okay, we can only do it until here. So if you have extra question to ask, do not forget to, you can also drop your questions in VEExpo's Facebook Messenger. Okay, so I will try to get Dr. Zahi to respond if possible. Okay, so
No problem.
and we have already come to the end of conference today. Okay, and once again, I would like to thank all of you here, and as well as I'd like to thank Dr. Zahi on his precious time to share with us so much valuable knowledge. Yeah. Okay, so thank you once again. Thanks, Dr. Zahi,
Thank you.
for
Thanks, Eva. Thanks
for
for
waking
your
up
hard
early.
work.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone.